Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 4 of the Luke and Alex Comicast, where each week we take a look at a different comic arc or graphic novel. Last episode, Alex picked Ultimate Spider-Man Volume 1 by Brian Michael Bendis, and this week I chose Frank Miller's Batman Year 1. So I was really excited to pick this one. This is personally my favorite comic book arc of all time. So I was happy to share this with Alex. I think he's read it before.
Yes, I've read this before. It's been a while. It's been, I don't know. I think I might have read it in middle school or something like that. So it's been probably at least 5 or 6 years, something like that. And as we were discussing before we began this, I was almost surprised how much I liked it now, because I remember not feeling too strongly about it back when I first read it, but reading it now, I feel like I definitely have a better appreciation for this comic, and I get why you like it so much.
Mm-hmm. So I can definitely say for sure that it starts off really strong. I love, just straight away with the first panel with the where he kind of sets up the juxtaposition between Lieutenant Gordon taking the train into Gotham. It's all grungy and dirty looking, and then you have Bruce flying high in the airplane. I just thought that was just right away, I think it sets a great tone for the comic.
Yeah, and I mean, everybody says this. I think you might have said this to me once, but this is really like a Commissioner Gordon story, or not Commissioner, but James Gordon.
Yeah,
Lieutenant Gordon.
Absolutely, yeah.
And he's so well developed in this.
Oh yeah, I think this is I'm trying to think if there's any other Gordon-centric stories that I.
Yes, remember when he was Batman?
Yeah, that was a time. But I mean, honestly, I just love his characterization, and they really kind of go into that really noir, cop who's seen it all. And I just love it. I think that Miller writes it so well, and he makes him both badass, but he also derives sympathy, and he also shows, I think, that he isn't a perfect person.
Oh no,
I don't think anybody you can really say is a perfect person in Frank Miller's Batman verse, to be honest. As you're going through, you see, Flash. He's so just such a despicable character, man. It's like every time you see him, it's like, oh man, I hate this character.
I mean, even Flash is just a representation of Gotham and the police department. They're all so fucked up, and you really come to understand reading this why Batman has to exist. Why he needs to. Why they need not only Batman, Commissioner Gordon as well, or James Gordon as well. There's not much justice in Gotham at this point.
Absolutely. I think kind of going through, you see kind of the lengths that, Bruce goes through, and you see at least to me, the iconic him kicking down the tree, which is just, it's so, what I think for me, it's so ridiculous, but it's also the way that he sells it, it's just enough that it doesn't break your immersion, but it just makes it wow, Bruce is a badass right now.
Yeah. He is.
Yeah. Then we see Gordon get beat up by the cops. I really liked the colors that they did, where it kind of, they combined the orange and browns and reds to create kind of it's a very visceral scene. You know, you see him getting his glasses knocked off. You see all the police with their bats like just beating into him.
Yes, it's
And yeah,
it's just like, it's really disturbing. And at first you're kind of like, oh, maybe he has a chance. He's like fighting back, but then it's just like, no, like he's gets overwhelmed.
mhm,
And there's that moment, I don't know, for me it's like almost cathartic at the end of it, where he like recognizes Flash, and you're like, he's going to do something about this, and that
yeah,
is
absolutely.
definitely a pleasant thing for the reader.
Mhm. And then we move into one of the more controversial aspects, I think, of Miller's year one, and I think something that uh, is still kind of hotly debated when it comes to Selena Kyle being a dominatrix slash prostitute. Um, what is your take on that? Are you a fan of that interpretation and how they kind of explain how she becomes Catwoman? Or
Yeah, I thought it was a little bit interesting. Um, she is working with like a child, right? As
yeah,
as a prostitute.
she's
Uh,
working with Holly.
yes, yes, and I don't know. I guess there's something about Catwoman's leather costume, maybe, that like lends to this idea of her being like, this dominatrix, like you're saying. Um, I don't know. I wouldn't say like I think it's a great idea. I wouldn't say that I'm opposed to it. It's Miller's choice.
Mhm.
How about you?
For me, I think I think it fits with the world that Miller is trying to construct, I would say. Um,
Yeah.
you know, would I, if I was writing a Batman origin story, would I do it? Not necessarily, but I think that Miller has a very strong image in his mind of how he wants to paint this version of Gotham City, which is dark, um, you know, dirty,
Corrupt.
corrupt. Yeah.
Yes.
Um, and I think so. I think it fits.
That's
Um,
that's a good point. I mean, like we were saying, this is a terrible Gotham. Even the police force is filled with criminals.
yeah. I mean,
Um,
and that's saying something honestly with
yes.
Gotham, like because Gotham is normally pretty bad, but I mean, I would say Miller's is one of the worst, if not the worst Gotham City. I mean, it's just like awful. It is.
Oh, it is. I mean, you feel it. People describe Gotham as like as a character itself sometimes, and I feel like you really feel that in this story, because it's like Gotham just feels like this terrible, disgusting, evil entity,
Mhm.
and it's like it needs people like Batman and Gordon to almost conquer it or purge it.
Yeah.
Depending how you look at it, but yeah, I just definitely really feel Gotham as this terrible thing.
Yeah. So we progress from that. We have Bruce kind of making his escape after he ends up basically uh, he gets into a brawl with the pimp, and then uh, the prostitutes kind of go after him, um, and we get after the little you see a nice scene where you have what Gordon and Flash. So it's one of my favorite scenes as well, where Gordon, you know, uh, says he's big Green Beret training. it's been 15 years since I had to take out a Green Beret.
Mhm.
Even so, he deserves a handicap, and he tosses him the baseball bat, and then
Oh.
Gordon still beats the shit out of him.
Oh, I love this scene.
It's
This
so
is really the cathartic scene.
yeah, it's just like if Miller knows, like just exactly how to make it have just like the perfect amount of impact where you're just like, yeah, go Gordon.
Yeah, kick his ass.
Yeah.
He blows
It's
it
like,
up. Yeah.
and it's also, I mean, Miller and Mazzucchelli really don't hold back when it comes to kind of the depiction of violence as well, which, and I like it. I think it's stylistic, and it's still brutal, I would say. But it's not, I would say that it fits, and it doesn't ever feel like, I would say sometimes with later Miller, it kind of goes, it can go over the top a little bit. But I would say for the most part with Year One, I think he finds a good balance.
It doesn't feel gratuitous, It doesn't feel, like you said, like it's not over the top. It feels very much tasteful.
Yeah.
Is the way I describe it. And like you said, it's aesthetically, it's also a very nice scene too. I like the colors. I like the kind of like silhouette of Gordon kind of like kicking the shit out of him.
Yeah. And I did also mention Mazzucchelli as well. I'm just curious, what are your thoughts on his art to kind of accompany Miller? Are you a fan of it?
Oh, I love it. I mean, just comparing this to, something drawn by Miller, like The Dark Knight, I honestly prefer this.
I do as well. Yeah.
I like Miller as a writer. I don't know exactly how I feel about his art. It's been a little bit since I've last read the Dark Knight, but I just remember not being the biggest fan of that. It definitely works more for that story. I don't think I would want Dark Knight-esque art for this. I really like the art. I like the art for Year One a lot.
Yeah. So we're kind of moving. We see the iconic, Mask of Zorro is shot in black and white, which was a nice touch. And then you got the bat.
Love the bat.
I think what's really interesting is that, for someone who's kind of reading it now, it's almost like, this is Batman's origin, what's so amazing about this? But you also have to keep in mind that, like, while it is, I think that for so many people, the way that Miller tells it is really the origin. And I mean, for me personally, that's how I kind of envision it. Like, if someone asks me when I think of Batman's origin, it's basically this, with the bat like screaming through the window.
We have several Batman origins that are somewhat modern. I'd say, like, on screen we have Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight and stuff. We have all these different Batman origins, but I really like Miller's. Sorry, when was Year One?
I will. Hold on, let me check.
Sure.
I want to say, I know it was. Wait, let me.
I mean, yeah,
obviously, it was 80s for sure. I was gonna check 80s. What year specifically.
I'm trying to see if it was around, like, how it was in, like, relation to, like, the Michael Keaton Batman movie.
It was 1987.
87.
So it was basically a year after Keaton's Batman.
Okay. So.
Oh, sorry. No, I'm sorry. 2 years before.
Okay.
2 years before, yeah.
And I also don't recall. If we got an origin in Keaton's Batman. I feel like that probably did happen. Yeah. I believe there was, because it was, like, connected to the Joker and stuff. But anyway, so you're getting a lot of Batman origins. More contemporary Batman origins, as opposed to way back when Bob Kane and Bill Finger first presented it.
Mm.
But yeah, this is I think in the introduction it was talking about how, like, do you really need to show Batman's origin again or something? But I believe the introduction to the trade that I have was talking about how Miller almost makes it maybe not necessary, but this origin is contributing to Batman and to the lore rather than just restating something over again.
Well, it's also so stylistic that I think it just it kind of sets up who. I think first it's important that, yes, it is true actually that this year one is considered, for a very long time it was considered the canon Batman origin story that DC was using, and then 0 Year came, and then it kind of was removed from the canon, and now it's kind of in flux whether it counts or not. Mm-hmm. But just in terms of Miller versus Batman, I think it sets up exactly the way that you can kind of see Miller's Batman or Miller's Bruce Wayne become the Batman that he is and become the person that he is, which is really kind of tormented, obsessive. I would say he's impulsive. Oh
yeah.
And it's interesting, because when you think of it, like, honestly, I don't know how I feel about it actually being kind of the canon Batman origin story, just in a sense because, one, I mean, the timeline has become so kind of strange now because, the setting of this was so much earlier than we're kind of seeing with the Batman comics today. But also, like, I think that the origin in this creates a very specific Bruce Wayne and Batman that I don't think a lot of that I think it loses some of that when there's different writers kind of changing that characterization that is very, very strong in this.
Yeah, I just want to ask a clarifying question. Were you saying that you maybe prefer this as specifically a Miller Batman origin, as in Dark Knight, whatever, in the kind of Frank Miller Batman universe? Is that what you were saying?
Yeah.
I see.
Again, I mean, I think it's difficult. I think that certain writers do it better than others, where when I think writers are writing a more tortured Bruce, a more brooding, where his mental state's kind of bordering, in terms of his sanity, which Alfred also kind of talks about and jokes later on. I think that's where this kind of origin fits really well.
Yeah. As we're talking about this, another Batman origin is coming to my mind is the Earth One Batman. Did you read that?
Earth One, I have not. No. I was planning to though.
Yeah. I believe if I'm not mistaken, I believe that's also an origin.
Yes.
It feels kind of it feels from what I remember, and this is also something I have not really read in a while. From what I remember, I believe it was resembled this much in the way of the inexperienced Bruce, who is maybe a little bit impulsive, maybe messes up a few times. But like you're saying about how dark this is and how tortured Bruce Wayne is, I don't remember that element, and that is kind of something I think I enjoy in this particular rendition of Batman's origin.
Yeah. I also love with this Batman, kind of moving a little bit forward to the first time you actually see Bruce in the Batsuit. You really get a lot of Bruce's inner dialogue, and his thoughts, which I think is kind of cool, because I think you see you really see all the stuff that's kind of going through his head, and I think Miller does it a lot where like when a character's in the middle of combat or in the middle of some sort of action that like you kind of listen into what they're thinking, and I think it's really cool to see, like you see Bruce panic when he like nearly knocks the kid. Well, he knocks the kid basically off like the balcony,
Yeah.
and you can see like his facial expression that he's like completely panicking, and then he ends up getting beaten pretty badly because he's trying to save the kid.
I really like that scene. I really like that scene. Just like I think Miller does an incredible job, just like building the tension there. I mean, he's holding this guy over over the railing as he's being attacked. I don't know, that was probably one of my favorites, along with the Gordon beating up Flash scene. These are great. These are great scenes.
Yeah. And he also, I think the big thing, obviously it is his first year, so it makes sense. But he shows a really vulnerable Batman, and that's what I also love. That's one of my. Great. I love it when Batman is really kind of being pushed or being tested in some way. Yes. I guess I could say like I pretty much I prefer less of his like Justice League stuff where that I feel like he becomes relegated more to like the brains and just like the miraculous like has a solution to everything.
Master tactician.
Yeah. Whereas with this you see a really like he says it like he has the skills and he has the methods, but he doesn't have that experience and he doesn't always really know what to do.
Yes. He says that a lot. Like he's like, like I have all this training, I have all this money, I have all these resources, yet there's something missing.
Yeah.
And
you kind of see him learn, I think, throughout, the arc kind of, at least what he feels he's kind of missing, which is, I think to me is kind of like the fear, the intimidation factor.
Yes. His identity as Batman,
Yeah. So we go forward. We have Flash giving his story of the bat that he saw, and then we have another super iconic scene with the dinner.
The dinner, yeah.
As Alex knows, I actually drew this the page where he's basically like coming through the rubble, saying, "Ladies, gentlemen, you have eaten well."
It's so good.
Yeah, he closes the fire. It's such a honestly, that is one of my favorite just Batman pages ever. Like it's just
it's gorgeous.
Yeah, it's so striking, and just the bold use of that orange, like as you see the fire just burn out, and you see Bruce's, super intimidating face, before the fire gets snuffed.
Yeah.
So, moving forward again, we see the I want to see where we want to go to.
Next important place.
We see it's Falcone.
Yeah, I believe so.
Or the Roman. Moving forward, we see Dent helping Bruce, which is, I think it's a nice kind of touch you see.
Yeah.
And then you do see the Uh, what were your thoughts on that? You know, I think that
The Essen Gordon
yeah,
relationship. I think it served its purpose. You know, it served its purpose to give a little more vulnerability to Gordon. I mean, of course, he's vulnerable in a lot of ways that are kind of uh, more situational. You know, he's vulnerable in the sense that he has this pregnant wife and stuff, and you know, he is just a man, and he can be hurt in these ways. But as far as like, you know, his conscience, he's up until then he's somewhat clean. He's this hero cop. He's doing everything right in this corrupt world, and then he does something that's not so right.
yeah.
He's overcome with, you know, passion, and has this brief affair with Essen.
Yeah. I think
I like.
yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I think it works to give Gordon kind of a flaw, which I think that, you know, I think that's a case where, you know, again with the world that Miller's constructing, that, you know, everybody has to be flawed. You know, there has to be a gray. But
Which
I
is
would
realistic.
but I would say that I think it's the weakest part of the arc, particularly because I just don't think that Essen gets a lot of development to make it kind of so, and that's really, I think, and even that, it's still, you know, it still works, I would say. It just, I think that there's so many other areas that were it's just so well developed, and that felt just like a hair rush to me, because it felt like he kind of had to be like, all right, gotta give him like some sort of flaw here, you know?
Yeah, and I don't know if I really like the way it was, you know, wrapped up exactly. I do in a lot of ways. I like the way Gordon handles it. I like the way he, you know, just comes clean with his wife, and they're not able to get to him by exploiting that information. By that I mean the commissioner. Though
Yeah.
I don't know how I feel about him just like kind of sending her away. You know, he's like,
Yeah.
okay, Essen, like you're saying, she's underdeveloped, and then he kind of is just like, okay, she has to leave because I can't control myself.
Yeah, that felt a little like,
Like, okay,
yeah, like,
really? Like, why don't you leave? Why
yeah,
don't you leave, Gordon?
yeah,
Like,
that
come
was,
on,
yeah, that felt, oh, I was not a fan of that.
not the best.
Yeah. But we continue forward. We get to, again, just another, like, all these parts are just iconic. The building explosion, when they're trying to track down Batman. And again, I think that this is like another just great example of a really vulnerable, you know, Batman who's really, you know, like, you know, he's really has to, you know, pull out everything he can to just survive, you know. He like you know, he has to chuck his utility belt because the thermite's exploding.
That was great. I mean, that he has to get rid of, like, I mean, it sucks for him, but
Yeah.
as far as like building, you know, tension, it's another thing like that guy dangling over the railing. It's another thing like that where Batman's, you know, he has to fight using, what is he? He has like two things. He has
The blow darts in his boot,
yeah,
and then he has the prototype signal to call the bats in.
Yes.
Which we'll get to that. That's
yeah, we should get to that for sure.
Yeah, but again, I think something I do want to touch on, because Bruce kind of mentions it in his monologues. You know, like part of it too is I think part of what makes this work too is that like Bruce himself even kind of acknowledges how just lucky he kind of got. You know, and I think Miller kind of points out like the ridiculousness of the situation that Bruce has gotten himself into, you know, like literally, like if he didn't have like the pick in his glove, he would have been dead, you know, he literally just would have been shot to death, you know, and that's, I think, something that like you don't really see a lot with modern Batman, you know, it's just like, oh, like even if like he's gonna get shot, oh, he'll have something for it, you know.
Yeah, like this Batman barely gets by. Like
it's like, yeah.
And I was thinking, just connecting this to our last, the Yeah, the last thing that we read, which was
Ultimate
also
Spider-Man. Yeah,
yeah,
I was gonna actually say the same. Yeah,
I was gonna say it was also an origin story, also early Spider-Man, early Batman.
yeah,
And I noticed that in Ultimate Spider-Man, a lot of times Peter also talks about how lucky he is, how he's like this was really just good fortune that he made it out alive from a certain encounter, which is I would say is probably if we're talking about like what's realistic. Of course, this is superheroes. Nothing's really realistic, but as far as like to actually start out as a vigilante like this, it's going to take a lot of luck, I'd say. So kind of makes sense that element is acknowledged in like both of these origin stories. They when you don't know what you're doing, the chances of survival are probably not so great as
yeah.
we see.
Yeah, we see going forward the fact that the building because apparently when the explosions were kind of set to go off, like we had thought that the building was empty and we found out it wasn't, which is really that's like a brutal thing. And you actually see someone like literally like burning in the flames, like, and even Bruce says like he can't help him, which is like
Oh,
it's brutal.
that was an unfortunate part where
Yeah,
he kind of just has to let this guy die, and it's like that's hard because he's Batman, he's supposed to save everyone, but then you see that sometimes he does have to look out for himself.
yeah,
There's not really much he can do in that situation.
yeah.
He saves the cat.
Yeah, he saves the cat. Even like and then we kind of from there we go into the awesome scene where he calls in the bats. I just love it. Just so it's so striking.
It's so strange to me, I don't know, like it literally just a swarm of bats going across Gotham. I mean, it's interesting, but I I was kind of like, okay, like interesting choice.
I felt like I felt like it worked. That was definitely one of those moments where like just you had to kind of just suspend your disbelief, but
Yeah.
but when you just kind of take it in, and I think the way that Mazzucchelli draws it, it's just so cool looking. You just see all the freaking bats, just swarming, and you see, Bruce manages to basically use them as his escape tactic.
I think it's just how grounded like the rest of the like how this like mostly feels. It's not like Batman in this world with like the Flash and Superman. It's really just it's like maybe comparing it to like the Dark Knight trilogy or something. It's just like this very much like real feeling Batman, and then this kind of like very very sci-fi out there kind of like device that just summons like a swarm of bats.
Yeah.
To me it was like a little bit off feeling, but I do think aesthetically it's very cool. The swarm of bats just coming in.
So we get the conclusion, as we said, to the actually, sorry, no, not yet. I was gonna say, but we see more development of the Gordon Essen arc, which again, it was to me that was kind of less of my focus. You saw that I will say it was kind of weird to me how they did the whole Switzerland thing. Where like that was like a little like, okay, did you seriously like, and even Essen like tells him like, well, yeah, if this guy is Batman, he'd probably go to some pretty like far lengths to protect his identity. So yeah, it probably would make some sense that he would do something like that. One of the other things I was wondering, like, did the person who was impersonating Bruce just like have the exact same voice as him? Like, was Gordon not gonna realize that like, oh, the voice is different?
Yeah, I assumed that they just didn't know Bruce Wayne's voice. very well, like not well enough to distinguish him from whoever this guy was, because I somehow doubt this person had like the same voice as Bruce Wayne.
Yeah, that was a little weird.
That's another moment where you have to suspend your disbelief, maybe.
We get Selena suiting up, which I really like that. I'm a fan of her costume in this. I think it's like a nice blend, I think, of kind of old and new. The one thing I was wondering, are you a fan of Selena with goggles or without them?
It's not something I particularly have thought deeply about, but I don't know if I'm a huge fan of the goggles. You know,
I was just thinking of it just because I'm like on the page where you really see her, you kind of see her face and the mask that she has on. And
yeah, without goggles.
Yeah, they don't have the.
I think I like this costume. I really do. I agree with you. It's a good blend of different versions, but I think it works without the goggles, and I wouldn't like it better with them. I'll say that much.
Mm-hmm. And then we have a really great monologue for me with Gordon kind of really reflecting over everything that's kind of gone on since he's been in Gotham. You know, like he's holding the revolver in his hand, and you kind of see him, you know, really kind of breaking down mentally, kind of going through his head, you know, what he's been, you know, his affair with Essen, you know, what he's put Barbara through, you know, and kind of and him kind of talking through his feelings when it comes to Batman. So again, we move to the final issue in the arc. You know, Essen leaves, as you said, which felt again. I was just kind of moved through it. We got Skeevers. That was a interesting little scene, I think, where you see and you see Bruce saying, you know, you can never escape me. Bullets don't harm me. Nothing harms me. But I know pain. Sometimes I share it with someone like you. And it's just like, oh, like again, that's one of those times where it's just like, it's just perfect to me, you know, like, and the way I think, you know, it's just so crisp. And yeah, you can say, okay, it's unrealistic or whatever, but you know, I think it just works with Miller's Batman so well, and with the world that he set up.
I don't think that. I mean, I don't think dialogue necessarily has to be naturalistic all the time. I think sometimes it can be a little dramatic, and I think that's kind of I think it's sometimes quite enjoyable. Like a lot of this dialogue is, you know, kind of intense, kind of maybe slightly over the top, but I mean, it's sick.
I mean, I would say like I think there's a line for me, you know, like once you start crossing into more like all-star Batman and Robin, when you start getting into like I'm the goddamn Batman, it starts getting a little bit less like, because I think at that point it's just so ridiculous that I'm kind of my mind is focused on how ridiculous it is.
Well, it's forced.
Yeah. Whereas with this, yeah.
No, I was gonna say I was reading a little bit on, you know, Miller's. I mean, to be fair, I was kind of reading like Reddit posts on you know, Miller's downfall, whatever you want to call it, and people were saying, you know, what Miller did was like, you know, focus on these elements of his writing that he thought people liked almost to like too extreme of a degree, which is like you can't force these kind of things, right? Like he thinks he wants to make like some, you know, whatever, tries to replicate this kind of dialogue, but in reality he's just creating he's creating, that All-Star Batman dialogue.
Yeah, where it becomes almost like a parody of it.
Yes, that's a great way of putting it.
Yeah. We see Playboy Bruce, his acting, which is fun. Kind of moving through. I think this issue is kind of interesting to me because I think especially from issue 3 to issue 4, I think you get a lot less action, more kind of resolution. Where Barbara, basically the police try to, I guess, blackmail Gordon, and it doesn't work.
And can we talk about Bruce like intervening, kind of like not as Batman?
Sure.
Like, I don't know. It seemed kind of unclear to me, but also kind of like he's not wearing like really anything when he saves Jim's son, and then Jim's kind of just staying there, but it conveniently doesn't have his glasses.
Yeah, he doesn't have his glasses on.
It's like a little bit like okay, was Bruce counting on that? Was he about to give up his identity?
Yeah.
What's going on here? I guess he was probably wearing some kind of makeup or some kind of disguise, even without his mask on, I'm assuming.
Yeah, because I remember before he put the scar on, so it could have been that he either had that, or it,
some kind of disguise, but still, it's just like it's bold. It's not exactly sure why he takes off his motorcycle helmet. He could have kept that on for extra to be extra anonymous, but I guess it's inconvenient to do things with that motorcycle helmet on.
I think there is one thing that is kind of, so again, one thing that Miller does do a lot that we kind of didn't touch on. He likes to put emphasis on a lot of words, and he did emphasize like I'm practically blind without my glasses. Sirens coming. Like, some of me almost wonders if it's possible that Gordon has an idea, but he's just either gonna choose to kind of put it in his, just choose to forget it, or to like, not remember it.
So you think that when he's saying he's practically blind, he's almost like kind of like nudging Bruce, like, hey, I'm
not gonna give away your identity.
Yeah. I like that idea. That's that's possible.
Mm-hmm.
I could see Bruce maybe being a little trustworthy with Jim.
I think it's also the same thing where we kind of mentioned before. This Bruce is kind of more impulsive, I think, than
Indeed.
And I think he does a number of things that are kind of like, what were you thinking? Like,
yeah.
And I think that's just kind of, I think, the Bruce that Miller is kind of portraying. And I kind of like that in some sense, because I think it works, of like what, again, like Batman has all the skills and all the brains and stuff, but, there's still things that kind of are lacking for him as kind of a human being, I guess.
Yeah.
That can kind of be a downfall for him. I think, the last page we get one, a really cool part where Gordon's kind of wrapping everything up. Flash basically turns on Loeb. Gordon gets the promotion to captain, and then you see the last two panels that someone's threatened the Gotham Reservoir, and he calls himself the Joker. It's like, I
know.
Such a good cliffhanger.
I like this ending. I really liked it. Gordon just kind of standing up on the rooftop, the snow coming down or whatever.
Yeah. Honestly, reading this made me kind of sad that, like, so I know there is actually a Batman Year 2, but it wasn't written by Miller, and it also wasn't about a follow-up to this, like about the Joker. It was about, I don't even remember the Reaper, was it, or something? It was like, it was not really good. But like this really, like reading that is like, it would have been cool if we were able to like go back in time and have Miller do like a Batman Year 2,
Oh, that would be
where I think it would be interesting, and I think it'd also be a challenge to kind of have to write more of a superhero Batman that still is kind of grounded in some way.
yeah, still an
Because then you go into the Joker, possibly Two-Face. Um, I mean, I guess in some way, like you could kind of like, I know some people say they kind of see the Long Halloween as a sequel to Year One,
really.
which I do see it because it's another kind of noir inspired Batman, a kind of darker take, but I think that I don't know how well that works because I think Loeb has more of a, I don't want to say romantic, but it's more stylized, I guess. It's stylized in a different way, I think.
Yeah, it's
This I think is more depicting like really kind of more realistic, quote unquote, Gotham and world, where I think that Loeb's is more like it's leaning more into like really kind of stylized neo noir, uh, that I don't know if they exactly fit perfectly together.
yeah. I never really got that impression. I mean, it's been some time since I read Long Halloween, but I think I actually read this around the time, like when I first read both of those, I read them around the similar time, and I, I wouldn't really call call it a sequel to Year One.
Yeah, I mean, part of it's also just, yeah, like, I mean, it's also that I think Long Halloween's also kind of just happens to take place in the like time period that would happen after Year One, like basically like what happened in a Year Two, but maybe not necessarily Miller's Year One.
Yeah, I mean, like you're
Um,
saying, this could be kind of Miller. This can be looked at as Miller Year One specifically, rather than just
yeah,
Batman, general Batman canon Year One.
yeah. So overall, if you had to give it a grade, I'll let you pick. I'll let you give your grade first.
Sure. Yeah. I would give it, I'd say 4.7 for 4.8. I really like it. I think it's a great Miller, great Batman origin. It's, I don't know if I would say it's my favorite Batman comic of all time. Um, I wouldn't say it's my favorite comic of all time like you. So it's not a perfect rating, but it's a very good comic. It's a very, that I would, yeah, I think 4.8 would be my rating.
Yeah, I basically I'm gonna be like 4.9.
Oh
Because
no,
as you said,
five.
I think that there's points where it like just starts crossing into the border sometimes where I think it feels a little like, really, did that just happen? But
Yeah.
overall, I think it's just so tight and so well delivered. Like I really think there's a big point that should be made too, that like Miller literally goes through a year of Batman's origin in 4 issues, and it's so concise, yet you get all the information you need pretty much. Like you get so much detail into the character, like into Bruce and uh, Gordon specifically. You know, it's really impressive to me. And as someone who really loves kind of I guess like the iceberg theory, um, you know, this is like a perfect example of that to me. Uh, you
Uh,
know,
the, I'm
Yep.
Iceberg theory, not recalling what that is, but it sounds familiar.
So that's the theory, where it's kind of uh, you're
Oh,
going to remember.
no, I was just looking it up. I recall Hemingway's
Yeah,
technique. Yeah, I've heard of this.
yeah. Um, I would say the one area where that kind of gets broken is that Miller goes very heavily, I think, into um, inner thoughts. But when you actually look at like the actual dialogue and interactions between characters, I think you see a lot of that. Um, where I think he shows just kind of he shows exactly enough a lot of the time, to kind of build the characters realistically, develop them, um, and to create to me, kind of the definitive uh, Batman origin.
Yeah,
Um, yeah. So, um,
I can talk about what we're reading next week.
yeah, if you want to let the viewers know.
Sure. So I am choosing Fantastic Four by Jonathan Hickman. We'll read the first volume because I believe neither of us have read this before.
No, I have not.
Yeah, I haven't either. I've wanted to. I know it's supposed to be, classic. It's supposed to be some of the best Fantastic Four, if not the best Fantastic Four. And we were both talking about how we haven't really read much Fantastic Four. So I'm excited. I really like Fantastic Four, and only hear good things about Jonathan Hickman. I think I've read a little bit of his work and liked it.
Yeah,
So,
I'm super excited. It's going to be a lot of fun.
definitely. The
All
first
right.
one we've both not neither of us have read before. I think.
Yeah, I have not read it. Nope.
This is the first one comic that we're doing on this podcast that has not neither of us have read. So that should be different.
Yes, that is true. Yeah, we're both going to be going into it blind, so it should be a lot of fun. All right.
Definitely.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for watching, and we will see you next week.